Hi there. My name is Chris Hampton, co-founder here at Incite, and co-author of the Freedom Handbook, which we won't talk a lot about today, but there's a free link to that book with 600 plus references, 300 plus quotes, lots of videos, links, articles, great stuff in the video description below. Get your free e-copy, and if you'd like to support the channel and our work, then please buy some paper. Some t-shirts and great swag is coming too, and don't forget that our Patreon link is below. But let's dig in. Coming to you today from Spain. I've been here about 4 years. And again, the Mediterranean Sea, beautiful, another sunny, beautiful day right in front of me. I'm so happy to be here and discuss the global agora, marketplace, economy, and human capital, and a ton of new tools, models, platforms, initiatives, and hardcore solutions that are about to turn the entire world on its head. Buckle up, this is going to be fun. But just before we dig in to the economy, this video is all about the economic sector, and we've got an entire suite of foundational videos here on UHP, UP for short, Unleashing Human Potential, the Incite primary channel. Now, before I dig in there, I just might make you aware that if you're keen to learn more about me, whether it's, political aspects, more so the personal aspects of, personal development, and I know there's a lot out there in the world for, personal coaching, development, becoming the best people that we can be, but we, have a fair amount of unique insight in that sense, or certainly a lot of experience as a venerable, formidable, superhuman Canadian, who scores an 8 to a 10 on the ACE, or Adverse Childhood Experience score, and as a lifetime entrepreneur has done a pretty darn good job of conquering all of those weaknesses and turning them into strengths, we could say, to be somewhat trite about it. However, if you're keen, as I say, to learn a little bit more about that, I have a personal channel called Freeing Me, which covers all that stuff. And I'll just quickly show you what that looks like on the YouTube version anyways. Let's see here. Boom. Oh, that was some artwork from there. Oh, and there's there we go. Freeing Me. Now, there's only one video up there, but there's a ton just to come in the next couple of few weeks. There'll be a dozen or more videos uploaded on all kinds of different topics, from those amazing dogs, Gandhi, who moved with me to Spain, the big guy that you can see there. He's, maybe put him in perspective. There you go. There's Gandhi back in Canada just before we moved. And his younger brother, Guido, Galgo de Andalu, or Andalusia, who we adopted, I guess, about 3 years ago here in a tiny village where we were living, and he was abandoned. Not too far from here. But in any event, like to just dig right into the economy sector and start blowing your mind. So let's get to work. If you're unfamiliar with these new global models, oh, wait a minute here. Let's just kill the display. Was there anything else we need to talk about? Oh, very quickly, I guess, before we get off topic. Another thing that you might see behind me of interest, there's that beautiful girl, nicknamed her Intuition. If you didn't know this is a long-time cycling venerable pro in some sense, not quite competitive professionally, but certainly I've ridden these track bikes on the track, and was a bicycle courier in Toronto at about 20 years old for a couple of years. And boy, oh boy, I could probably outdo most of you on a bike. In any event, the point is, if you're interested in anything to do with cycling, all the different cool bikes that I've ridden and put together in a custom sense over my life, then we can talk about that in other videos on Freeing Me and all kinds of different things. Something just to bear in mind: lose your dreams, and surely you'll lose that mind. So, with all that said, let's dive right in and talk about this global agora, which is a favorite term of ours. But again, if you're unfamiliar with these new global models that Incite is assisting in introducing through these channels, or through UP, more specifically, Unleashing Human Potential, firstly, again, buckle up. These are the biggest ideas that the human race has birthed yet. And secondly, they aren't our ideas. Rest assured, our egos were left at the door long ago. And no doubt you'll certainly need to do the same. And you most certainly are going to need to open your mind just about as wide as it gets. So, and lastly, you're going to find some more information, detailed explanations of various key components. There's a lot in this work, hence the foundational set of videos describing things like WorldVoice, collaborative institution, which, by the way, a collaborative institution is the true, I'll come back to that in a minute, the true near incalculable breadth, potential, and reality of humanity's third ever revolution in information is paramount to understand. It's going to take the human race hundreds of years, certainly probably more, of course, to even begin to comprehend the true scope of this potential and where we're headed. Another great term, an idea, big dream we can all grab a hold of. How does Magna Carta 2019 sound? Pretty exciting stuff, right? So all those other videos describing some of those things, I'll just pull that back up for you and show you, the Unleashing Human Potential channel. There's the Incite word mark, our primary logo. And again, WorldVoice explained, introduced, and unleashed. You might want to start there. A horn heard round the world. Magnets that are bringing everybody together. Magna Carta 2019. There you go. An irresistible call. The way to replace Google and new innovation for global organization and individual success. That's our Modus Operandi video. Just a super video. Make sure you check that one out. Internet redesigned for freedom, calling all information sector leaders and the whole world. Okay, so that's the video on the information sector. Later today, hopefully tonight, we'll be publishing the next video after that, which is on the advertising sector. And right now here, we're looking at the economic sector. Information, economy, probably paramount above all other things, right? Certainly. In fact, with respect to information, and I believe most people would agree that economy sort of rules the world beyond that. So, all that said, you're going to also need just a fast understanding of some of those terms that we're discussing. And, let's see, all new terms, by the way, some of our own vernacular, like collaborative institution, which we define as the way that SOP is innovating. Or SOP being a standard operating procedure, a business term, if you're not familiar with it, is innovating at the hands of, and not just business, but sort of, whether it's non-for-profit, whatever, organizational term, standard operating procedure. How is this changing at the hands of this information revolution? Number 3, setting the stage, another great term, which is sort of new fluid models for not only education and innovation, but also creation. Now, lastly, a term is change maker, which we use a lot, and define, although it's a term out there in the world, we define it slightly differently for our own purposes as anyone unleashing human potential. Okay. So bear that in mind. Now, final caveat is the use and abbreviation of our own term, our own name rather, Incite. Now, is simply just Incite for short. A bit of a pronunciation blend as well, but either way. As well as the large grouping of ideas that we sort of briefly touched on that comprise Incite's own modus operandi, normally referred to in short from here on as just the modus for conversation's sake. Now, all that said, again, hope you've buckled up, grab your favorite beverage, whatever you need. Here we go. Everything that we're discussing is applicable and discussed in other videos for other sectors, again, of human activity, industry, for profit and not. And here we're going to be discussing these applications as they apply to the global economic sector, which we lovingly often refer to as the ancient Greek term, if you're not familiar, agora, A-G-O-R-A. And within which, let's include the critical, central, and primary, perhaps, element of human capital and/slash resource. So think LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed.com, Monster, and all the world's job hunting sites, and so on. Other areas tied to human resources and capital. Now, notably, again, after information, economy can certainly be considered an inescapably dominating influence on all other sectors. Hence, the global debate surrounding institutions such as the Federal Reserve for the United States and the IMF globally. And boy, oh boy, am I ever pleased. About 10 years ago, certainly, I mean, at least, maybe closer to 20 years ago, in fact, I knew full well a lot about the truth behind these privately owned institutions. But, you know, when discussing it with just about any other breathing human, I get a lot of pushback and nobody really knew what I was talking about. Now, thankfully, today, as a result of this third ever revolution information, how many people know the truth about those organizations? That's pretty inspiring stuff. And I think points to the real explosion in the capacity of the internet to route around censorship and treat it like the malfunction it is. Quick play off John Gilmore's famous quote, rather. But in any event, with all that in mind, as we discuss methods to liberate the global economic sector from pervasive corruption, eliminating all corruption incomplete is, of course, an impossibility. The same way eliminating crime incomplete is impossible. However, the criminal and corrupt chains that bind the world and 99% of us individuals around the world from appreciating the true fruits of our labors is certainly not only possible, but much easier than most of us would ever think. So after quickly discussing the easier elements of this discussion, we're going to return at the very end to the crux of it all, specifically focusing on the linchpin or fulcrum point, we might say, to economic integrity in all transactions, their voluntary element. Now, firstly, let's bear in mind the voluntary exchange or your choices with your resources, right, is another way of looking at that, in critical combination with public feedback, right? And or, all the readily available reviews as we've come to appreciate in the internet age. So with respect to this aspect of review, opinion, and public experience in an ever-changing dynamic sense, think about companies like Yelp, right? Furthermore, Google reviews, of course, as they currently serve us, and ask yourself, is there censorship, favoritism, and moreover, is the full body of information most easily sortable and the ability to truly know and understand all there is to know about the businesses that you choose to do business with? Certainly not, right? And of course, I think it's fair to say there's some censorship and favoritism, but we certainly don't have all that information organized properly and as effectively as it could be. Now, imagine utilizing the previously discussed models of collaborative institution, which I don't think we defined for you. So, i.e., new business, new partnerships, platforms, and tools that combine the best global private businesses and marketplaces with the open source community and even the nonprofit sector to create a global review, feedback, and consumer information system, which much more effectively combines, sorts, and makes available for you literally all information online about these organizations in an easier to understand, sort, and utilize form. Now, this global review, consolidation, and interaction aspect itself is hardly the most complex task at hand. And the inherent benefits to the free market, to all of your purchase decisions, will be produced, correcting the corruption, service, and product value, as well as overall consumer and provider satisfaction will be enormous. And we're talking about big changes, even though this isn't necessarily hardly the biggest idea we're going to discuss today. I want you to think big, friends, fellow humans. Please think big, no matter what kind of life you live or where you live. What we are really talking about here isn't just a better Yelp, Google reviews, or eBay reviews as another one of the largest collections of online review sources, resources for that matter. No, of course we are talking about integrating all online reviews into a new and vastly improved system, yeah. But also, we're laying out here a vastly improved global marketplace itself, or Agora. And it's capable and destined, in fact, to dethrone all unhealthy monopoly and activity, as well as improve on the global economy and marketplace/agora in every single sense. To start, imagine that we are certainly talking about the dethroning of Amazon, even as one major example. All these potentials are absolutely possible. In fact, right in our hands by way of relatively simple ideas and practices, i.e. again, a consortium of small businesses and large from around the world into a global marketplace, all business in fact, and collective forces combining the best of us, individuals and potentials, activities and industries, with the open source, again, and even nonprofit sectors, business communities globally. This is our only hope, indeed, for dethroning all corruption and unhealthy, very dangerous monopoly, exemplified best, perhaps, by Amazon and certainly more importantly, Google. Waiting for the private sector to dethrone Google, who, if you're not aware, I think I heard it said in the last week that Google has, 40,000, 30,000 engineers earning between, $200,000 and $500,000 US a year working on just their algorithms. How can the private sector, an organization that's even already, on its way, compete with that? Pretty tough. And as we know, crony capitalism, the ties between, unhealthy aspects of the global economic marketplace and government institutions, state organizations, as well as the things that we talked about like the Federal Reserve, IMF, and all kinds of other shady things, whether it's mafia or whatnot, makes things pretty difficult. So let's look at that key statement and aspect it just once more, last time, for this relatively easy to understand equation again. But it's a pretty big idea, new idea, to combine into a brand new global consortium, all businesses, small businesses, big, from around the world, into a global marketplace and a collective force that utilizes our individual and collective potentials in business, indeed, as well with the open source community, nonprofit community, into a plethora of initiatives and platforms tied together. Yes, I know we said it a few times, but that is, so key, as well as the essence in many ways, not totally, but the essence of the term collaborative institution. And remember, which is defined as, you'll recall, the way that SOP is innovating at the hands of humanity's third ever information revolution. Now, of course, this is a trend which will continue to develop long after all of us are dead, our children are dead, and many more generations to come, in fact. But think about how long, take a second, think about how long it's taken for humanity to fully unleash the potential of information revolution. Number one, learning to write. What about number two in the Gutenberg press and the books? And then ask yourself, have we yet? Has humanity fully unleashed our potential with respect to either? Now, as a writer, I've been, paid, of course, and have a lot to learn, as just a small note when thinking about that. Of course, there's just so far to go. So when we're thinking about Information Revolution 3, which probably started with radio and TV, of course, which were quickly regulated, hence the discussion and debate around the world with respect to internet freedoms. So, no is the resounding truth of the matter. We have come a long way. We have a long way to go still to unleash our potential in terms of writing and reading. Can everybody do it? No. And how much better could we get? So, furthermore, we need to ask, how well do we understand our true potential and trajectory at the hands of these two central developments beyond all others? Because every other revolution in human history, you're talking industrial, the Enlightenment, it doesn't matter what it is, they're at the hands and just, ripples of the information revolutions themselves. Please bear that in mind. So to begin to grasp, it's going to take an awful long time to grasp this true potential of where we're headed and the truly incalculable power and pervasiveness of this new information revolution. So all that said, Once again, let's focus our attention in a newer, more humble sense on what we do know. Collaborative institution and the combination of all of our activity and industry for profit, not open source to boot, into that connective, interactive, self-correcting mechanism that's at the very heart of these relatively inevitable changes. This is the future. This is our task for everybody all around the world. This is what we're doing. It's an irresistible call. In other words, it's also a dream that we can all share in and profit exponentially from, the fruits of which enable the truest and next level of the core of humanity's greatest hero journeys and stories, their work for all of our individual rights, lives, and freedoms. This is our freedom realized more fully. Now, when we said relatively inevitable, this is because, of course, we could self-destruct and consequently turn back the clock in devastating fashion on human evolution, re-entering a dark age far more easily than any of us would like to think about. So with these new tools in our hands, the greatest tools that humanity has ever seen, and the clear as day awareness around the world, no matter who you are, where you are, and what your beliefs might be, that our technology and capacities, again, all born from a new revolution in information itself, are rapidly growing abilities. These are struggling to be met by the necessarily corresponding evolution in our ethics, right? So how many times have you heard about and thought about these, gargantuan leaps forward over the last 150 years or so in science, technology, and industry, alongside the corresponding lack and near absolute stagnation in our ethics, philosophy, rights, and freedoms? Big problems, right? This truly is, as many a wise person has noted and discussed, our greatest danger. Whether we're talking singularity theory, nanotechnology, it doesn't really matter. We know nuclear technology was maybe the first big example. We have the power to destroy ourselves. We better figure out how to manage ourselves a little bit better in conjunction with that growth, right? So respectfully, no matter who I've ever spoken with about this in my entire lifetime, and especially with viable solutions in hand within the Freedom Handbook and this work that's taking, fullest form over the last 5 or 6 years, only a small handful of people aside, truly, very few of us are able to not only understand what's needed, but certainly understand how we might accomplish this major growth in philosophy, governance, and or ethic, no matter what name we decide to give these things or angle we posit addressing them by. So in answer, and the truth is so inspiring and positive that you should get as excited as humanly possible when you truly understand and when you really think about the following statements. The future becomes brighter than you could have ever imagined, than you can truly imagine. Ask yourself, how many people, or better said, how few, if hardly any at all, how many of the people and world of us that lived under Egyptian tyranny, for example, and then, the divine dictatorship that followed for, another thousands of years afterward all around the world, in all and every case, how many of those people ever thought something else was possible? And furthermore, before the Magna Carta was originally published in the year 1215 or so, for a great many years afterwards, how many of us even believed in individual rights and the non-divine right of kings and queens to rule the world as gods? The answer, is of course, next to nobody. There's certainly very near to no one ever believed real change from that kind of tyranny was ever possible. Now today, we certainly know that that's the case, but we hear the same complaint all around the world and can easily understand that many, if not most, all of us alive currently believe still that a ruling class, a ruling intelligentsia, i.e. government itself, by another name, is an inevitable and in fact necessary reality. And certainly along the road to our future, that is the case. We need to start from here. Can't just abolish the government tomorrow. However, this idea, in truth, is wrong. It's dead wrong. And it's the most deadly disease ravaging the human race. Period. Now, I know also that over half the human population, roughly, thereabouts, or certainly in Western countries, receives their paycheck from the state. So this is a big, hard idea to swallow, and I get it. But again, please open your mind and just imagine the possibility and note the exact similarity and reality between the Egyptians, the public at that time, and the public around the world before the Magna Carta. Same thing, folks. Did they imagine it's possible? And what really are we talking about? Isn't it the same thing on another level? So, we absolutely can and will most certainly evolve past these tired and now expired ideas. That is, of course, unless we self-destruct, as discussed. However, even among the most ardent supporters of true freedom, anti-statism, voluntarism, whatever you want to call it, in recent past, and including all the modern folks working on solutions and education, foremost these days, everyone I've ever come across in some of the most heated debate on the internet today is, without exception, this issue. We're all struggling to understand how this could be possible. How can this come about? What road must we travel together? Now, humbly as can be, personally and professionally, alongside my partner, Luke, here at Incite, co-author of the Freedom Handbook, we are pointing to the ideas inherent in the term collaborative institution and the initiative that we've coined, Magna Carta 2019. Make sure you check out that video on our channel here, as well as the Modus Operandi video and all the rest, to better understand, learn more about these ideas. And remember, it doesn't really matter what name we give them, right? These terms that Insights coined are merely signposts like all language. So by all means, change it if you like. We're just doing our best to help. However, these ideas are, in fact, certainly not the answer entirely, but a large part, if not the central beating heart of the road, the yellow brick road, metaphorically and archetypally, that we're discussing and that we all so desperately seek. The future of the human race, the means by which all freedom will take its next natural leap forward for the entire world, is now here. It's in our hands. And in these words and ideas. So, let's get serious, and please, we beg of you, the best of us, it is time to rise up, step up, and take the early scraps that are on offer, and we're speaking to ourselves in our own humble way, alongside so many others in history and alive today, and firstly, believe greater freedoms that you can imagine, healthy, wholesome, and incalculable and pervasive as can be, will come to pass. And then, let us begin to realize, actualize, and live them. All it takes, you don't have to wait for permission. We don't have to wait. We don't have to ask. We just start building more of these tools and connecting them. For all freedom has ever really asked of us, bear in mind, is the sacrifice of the work and the responsibility inherent in freedom to share and revel in its rewards. Our truest freedoms are ideas as old as our oldest history books and greatest thinkers and heroes, realized in many ways to be sure. But perhaps it's true that before now, never possible, incomplete. Ruling powers were simply too great, too organized, too capable in comparison. Now, however, the individual has become something more, individual and connected, in a global collective that is more powerful than anything ever imagined. We have the tools, and it is time. So lastly, let's quickly come back to and think about the central force of all which we discussed in life, in crime, and certainly again in this economic sense, voluntary exchange. This is at the heart of freedom's next steps, as well as previous. Growing up and our human evolution. Ask yourself, is not voluntary exchange and action in every single sense bar none the crux of freedom, and defined, in other words, as the removal of systemic coercion, corruption, crime, and humanity's freedom's next natural step. The term free markets is quite literally perfect. However, the term capitalism is among the most bastardized terms in the world, and being an ism, perhaps already flawed, and most certainly, in this wordsmith's humble opinion, all too similar to the term anarchism in today's world, most certainly, by way of perhaps being unsalvageable for a long, long time, if ever. Now, Incite, and perhaps myself worked diligently, among many other things, at dismantling Orwellian doublespeak. But in the case of capitalism, as was the case recently with the term, net neutrality, which again we just replaced with internet freedoms when we discuss these things, because that idea got bastardized pretty darn quickly, to simply circumvent the misunderstanding and rhetorical warfare. What shall the new term for capitalism be? And why not use only free markets then, and abandon the term capitalism? Or perhaps voluntary exchange. That would work. Or we can certainly come up with a new term too, which may be the easiest and most effective way to avoid all manners of difference of opinion and definition in a global sense, such as the term freegora, F-R-E-E-G-O-R-A, as an off-the-cuff attempt that I came up with today when editing this for y'all. So what do you think? Now lastly, and quickly, before we unpack and illustrate more clearly the true reality of capitalism, understand that the terms crony capitalism, fascism, oligarchy, plutocracy are all terms that much more honestly define the world's current capitalist markets. Now, although the truth is, of course, as Murray Rothbard famously said, capitalism is the fullest expression of anarchism, and anarchism is the fullest expression of capitalism. Not only are they compatible, but you can't really have one without the other. True anarchism will be capitalism, and true capitalism will be anarchism. Now, within the terms and ideas, so if you don't like the term capitalism and so on, I understand. Just drop it. Think freedom. Think free markets. And within the terms and ideas of free markets, free agora or free gora, the non-aggression principle. If you don't know what that is, the NAP, look it up. Anarchy and voluntary exchange/action at all costs are again the beating heart of our future, our potential, our freedom, grown bigger and healthier for all of us alive, all of our children, and the generations to come than ever before. So to all those that came before us and led the way, to those that speak of these ideas today, now is the time. Yes, we must certainly build a bridge and road from where we stand. But these changes are upon us and well beyond possible, probable, in fact. Most important, though, we all must understand that these changes and greater freedoms for all of humanity, this will require the greatest courage, sacrifice, and responsibility that have ever lived in the human heart. We must rise to receive our freedom. The good news is that we all have these things already beating within us. Our greatest heroes have all understood that these basic concepts have existed since the dawn of mankind and are employed, in fact, in all the freedoms we already know. These are not new ideas. These are the ideas that our freedoms are already based on. And finally, grown large enough to be without exception, without the systemic coercion and corruption of individual and arbitrary powers. You can never stop an individual from trying to take advantage of another or perhaps committing a criminal act. But we can absolutely 100% say goodbye to systemic corruption, institutionalized coercion, and crime. Those days are nearly over. It is finally time to dethrone the impossibility of altruistic leaders of the past and the insanity of the divine right to rule, and instead allow our freedoms to rise themselves, free and pure, to rule the world in principle, practice, and deliver true freedom for all. Thank you for spending time with us today. It has truly been an honor to share these ideas, to talk about, that aren't ours. Again, remember, we stole them, every last one of them, from all of human history and all of the best of us alive today. We're simply trying to do our humble part as messengers to make things more clearly understandable, readily available, and speed our inevitable evolution towards freedom fully realized. And again, if you like the work that we're doing, please support this channel. Not just on YouTube. You'll find us all over the web, whether it's minds.com, Steemit, BitChute, Reel.video, of course the Twitters and the Facebooks of the world as well. Why not leverage these tools as best we can to their own demise, right? Sounds like fun to me. But please, support us, If you like the work, we desperately need a little bit of early support. And this we've funded this adventure ourselves for years now. My partner has funded this to the tune of probably $200,000-$300,000 to date in Canadian funds, mind you. But still, it's a fair pretty penny to just come out of our pockets. And I funded it with years and years of my life, of course, as well as a whole lot of money. And so, please support the work. And if you can't support the work financially, know that that's not necessarily what we're asking for either. Share. Spread the message. That's the biggest job that we all have. This is a dream the whole world can share in, that's bigger than going to the moon and far more pervasive in its benefit. Remember, we can all participate. We all profit. And just the dream itself. Humanity needs stories. That's what makes us go. This is a story that you know. So, share it. And share in the joy of the realization that, like the Egyptians of the days of old, and like the people that lived under feudalism and divine right of ruling, kings and queens, that just subverted that reality to a new term called government and a little bit of a different equation. It certainly works better for our freedoms, but has a long way to go, doesn't it? Everybody can agree at the systemic corruption and crime. Not everybody can agree on the chicken and egg between the state being the real cause of that. We often try and, I know a lot of people are confused by that. Even Peter Schiff, one of the most respected economists in the world, even coming from a vein that, Luke and I quite appreciate in terms of being closest to these realities. I saw an interview with Joe Rogan, maybe I'll put a link below, where he really struggles with this idea this idea as well. And boy, oh boy, are we excited to chat with Peter Schiff and so many others about this reality, because the truth of the chicken and the egg, folks, with respect to government, corruption, and economy, free markets are the solution. And every bit of crime out there, and corruption, and monopoly is only ever possible when you bend and break the rules. Remember, the man with the gold makes the rules, the man with the gold breaks the rules. Or woman, however you want to look at it. That's the facts. And as we know, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? That's the problem. It's not these human beings' fault. We're not going to point, it's not even their fault. Let's not get mad at the Clintons of the world. Let's just replace them. We don't need rulers anymore, folks. What we need are better tools to organize things in a transparent fashion so that there's no one person that can take advantage. It's pretty simple, and the tools are in our hands. I'll see you out there doing the work.